when people talk about how much power does the center really have, you cite some recent elections and percentages gained by people who were moderate versus people who were polarized on one side or the other. Do you remember those statistics?
Well, let's just use a couple of them. I mean, the hit on centrists is somehow that they're weak. They're not very powerful vote getters. And this is an old line. When President Eisenhower was being run against by Robert Taft on the right in 1952, we'll just quick history. He was called the general who won World War II was called the candidate of effeminates by the far-right Republicans who were isolationists who didn't want to fight in World War II. John McCain, for example, in his last re-election, won with 74% of the vote. Right? That's because he was in the center of his party, which is why he's actually being primaried now from the right. You look at Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins win decisively in a Democrat-dominated state 2 Republican senators. Not because they're weak by being on the extremes, but because they're strong in the center. Dick Lugar wins an election overwhelmingly, where only a few states away, Rick Santorum, a very conservative senator, gets his butt kicked.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell, J.D. Hayworth, people like that.
The strength is in the center. I mean, it is there for everybody to see, but we have been so fed a dumbed-down version of politics, and the extremes are so invested in telling everybody that their way is the only way that, frankly, they lie and distort.
Let's go to the audience again for a question. Gentleman in the green coat over here, perhaps, close to the microphone.
Hi, I'm Andy from Brooklyn. I think
Speak up if you would, Andy. Great.
I'm sorry?
Could you speak up just a little bit?
Sure. I think this is why we live in a Prozac nation, because of all this confusion. And I try to understand things. I consider myself what you call it, a Bush delusional syndrome. I think
Bush derangement.
Yeah, I think I have to admit.
Are you recovered?
I'm slightly recovered. I mean, I still don't like him, but I think I fell into it. My question is, this is going to be maybe philosophical or whatever, but if people think that this country has shifted so far right, say compared to the last 40 years, and I'm not saying that's right, I kind of went into that, but I mean, the more you look back in history, it's like it's shifting back and forth. If you think it has shifted so far right, so where the center right now is not a true center. It's a center of between what is left and right. You know what I'm saying? It's not a true center.
I get
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So the point is, and this is one of the arguments folks use against the center, is that it's not a true position. It's always relative to where the extremes are at any time.
And typically it's slightly to the right of center.
Right. Well, America is a center-right nation, but only slightly. And this is what our friends in the Republican Party sometimes forget. Maybe a center-right nation, but it's a center-right nation, not a right nation, which is how they always lose elections. To your point. To your second point, I think, which is about the drift in American politics, it is important because there is a reality check which folks need to have. Some folks in the Republican Party this year have been pushing an ideological purity litmus test, right? They want to prove by checklist that you're a good, honest Republican.
That this was after the Didi Scott-Safava incident in upstate New York.
Exactly right. Well, one of the ironic things is that, if you talk to committed conservatives, and there are many thoughtful people, they always hold up Reagan and Goldwater as their two icons. Well, the irony is that Reagan and Goldwater couldn't pass those ideological litmus tests today. Goldwater was pro-choice and in favor of gays in the military decades ago. Ronald Reagan signed a liberal abortion law. He grew the size of government. He presided over tax increases when necessary, both as governor and president. All principled people, leaders of the conservative movement. But when you try to dumb down our politics and make it one size fits all, history's got a sense of humor. And the reality is that Goldwater and Reagan wouldn't be considered conservatives today by the people who were acting like such ideological absolutists and sort of the sentinels of the conservative movement.
And another question, the young lady here, just wait for the microphone. Here we come. Go ahead.
I hate to ask.
What's your name? Where are you from?
Sorry, Ariana. I'm from the area. I hate to ask such a glib question, but
there are no glib questions, just glib answers.
Okay. But if we don't give these people attention, wouldn't that naturally diffuse their power?
Great question.
How do you see your book as really changing the discourse around this issue?
Great question, and it's a question I've gotten in one form or another by some very senior people who do believe that you only feed these folks with attention. I take a different view. I think that politicians will pander to the outer reaches of politics, particularly if they feel like they can get away with it. They will use fear and hate in the service of hyper-partisanship. No problem, as long as they feel they'll get them votes. And I believe that sunshine is the best disinfectant. I believe if you actually shine a light on these extremes and make them the issue, then they'll become political kryptonite. And politicians can't use them. They can't then effectively divide to conquer, which is the cynical business they're in right now. So I think it's more important to call them out and to shine a light on them. And by doing so, we also take the power back, because the extremes aren't defining the majority of us. Instead, we're defining the terms of the debate. That's the whole idea of Wingnuts, is to take the power back and define the terms of the debate. So it's a great question.
And even if mainstream media did not shine a light on these people and give them attention, there are plenty of people who are making millions of dollars a year fueling the outrage that earns them the money, so they're going to get plenty of exposure anyways.
That's exactly right, and that's also how we, I think, ultimately stop this. The center is going to lose the fight, whether it's in the media, whether it's in politics or publishing, if we constantly play defense. The reality is that we actually do have the numbers. Pew poll came out a little while ago, so that only 15% of the country defines itself as conservative Republican, and 11% defines itself as liberal Democrat. I know, hard to believe sometimes in New York. Nonetheless, true. The vast majority of us are in the middle. And yet, we have been basically written out of the political process. We are degraded in the debate. The only way we take that power back is if we begin playing offense, not defense. If we approach this problem from a position of strength, not weakness. That's the whole idea. And to do that, I believe we're going to find that those folks in the center, the 40% of Americans who are independent, it's the largest untapped market in American politics.
Okay, one more question from the back here, then I got a couple of things to ask you, John. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you. My name is Ryan. I'm from the area. Thank you, John. Just to turn the argument over on its head, I'm wondering, why are Wingnuts so bad? Isn't it what the Founding Fathers envisioned in terms of there being factions that face off one against the other in terms of sharing their arguments and talking through their arguments? And doesn't it actually energize the debate between the far left and the far right, which eventually involves middle America and the centrists? What's so wrong with the Wingnuts? And I'm a little concerned when you talk about stopping them. Isn't the idea of America to have free speech and allow people to express themselves the way that they may want to?
I really appreciate that question. Thank you. This is a great debate that's been going on. There are folks who've been trying to preach this idea that there's nothing more American than a view of politics as an all-or-nothing ideological blood sport. That's American as apple pie. And of course, it's always, it's absolutism disguised as apple pie. It's always, I'm not saying that President Obama wasn't born in America. By the way, I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just asking the question. Wingnuts right now love to wrap themselves up in the American flag. And there is this sense that they are the true defenders of the Founding Fathers. And it promotes an idea that I find it's arrogant, that any political party should presume to own the American flag or the Bible or the word and concept freedom. The Founding Fathers, just as a reality check, of course, as you no doubt know, were focused on uniting the nation, not dividing it. The Founding Fathers, Hamilton, Madison, warned about the dangers of faction. That's what Federalist Papers are all about, not exacerbating it. And, I close the book with George Washington, just because it's always good to go back to first principles, right? So let's take a look at his farewell address to the nation real quickly. He warned against, he said that there was no greater threat to the American experiment than a partisan demagogue who, quote, agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindling the animosity of one part against the other. He warned against those who would, quote, serve to organize faction, to give it an artificial and extraordinary force, to put into place the delegated will of the nation, the will of a party. George Washington warned us about the Wingnuts. So that's important to keep in mind.
You say in the book, John, that my country right or wrong has been replaced by my party right or wrong.
That's right. I mean, we have had a total flip in this country. One of the telltale signs of the Wingnut is that they confuse patriotism with partisanship. And the idea that my party right or wrong is in danger of replacing the idea of my country right or wrong. You cannot respect the country and demonize the president. There's an old idea in this country where he's a duly elected president. And even if you disagreed with him, you respect the office, because we try to take a larger view of our politics that seems to be out of fashion right now, which is that the national interest is supposed to trump special interests. I begin the book with a